नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण 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 स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण स्वामी नारायण नारायण
A global namaste and a very good afternoon, a good morning, or a very good evening to whichever part of the globe you're joining us from. Minla Zoom sessions organized by Meena and Lalit Soda. These Zoom sessions started in the pandemic when we had a lockdown in April of 2020. The main motive of this session was to spread inspiration, motivation, encouragement to the people around the globe who were going through the effects of the pandemic. And the way we decided, Meena and I, was to bring in inspirational, motivational speakers who we can get enthused by so that we can make our lives successful. In every which way, happiness, peace, love, and harmony. That is what we wanted to spread. Today, Minla is truly delighted in saying that we are at our 41st Zoom session that we have been conducting through the pandemic. And we've had an awesome lineup of speakers who've come in. Equally today, we have a super awesome gentleman who's joined us, Mr. Kishan Devani. I would like to give you an introduction of our guest speaker today, who is truly an awesome personality who the younger generations are going to see his work, have seen his work, and get inspired by what he does. Kishan Devani, a BEM, the British Empire's medalist. He's got the FRSA. He's a public figure engaged in many, many diverse segments of society, from politics, education, to the charitable sector. Kishan was recently honored by Her Majesty the Queen in her New Year's honors list in 2020 with the British Empire Medal, which is the BEM. He was also made a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts in 2015 and was honored with the Freedom of the City of London in 2016, which made him the youngest of the BAME Freemans of London. Kishan has also been like a role model to thousands of young British Asians and the BAME communities today due to his continuous efforts of promoting community cohesion and diversity in public life within the British Asian community. He is currently working on his memoir, and he's going to share a little bit about this with us on this session. Kishan is a son of a Ugandan Asian refugee, and his memoir will be speaking of the trials and the tribulations, the successes and the failures of how life and how determination, dedication, passion, and faith brought him through. So Kishan, a very warm welcome and a namaste and a Jai Shri Swaminarayan to you, and a welcome on the Minla Zoom session. I just want to make sure that we have the connectivity. Are we connected, Kishan?
Yes, you should be able to hear me.
Brilliant. We can hear you and we can see you very clearly. So I would love to move on to the next segment, whereby the Minla Zoom session does not move forward until and unless the lady behind the Zoom session gives it a kickstart. Now, this is the young lady, Meena Ben Kagram, from a small town of Nakuru, Kenya. Got inspired at her tender age of 75 and wants to spread this message of love, peace, and unity, inspiration, motivation throughout the globe. So she is going to give you a traditional welcome, and then we shall kickstart the program. Meena Ben, a warm welcome on the session. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Lalit. Kishan, just like traditional, I would like to put a tilak on you. And here are the chokha, and welcome
Thank you so much.
Welcome to our Zoom. And here is my old man who is going to garden.
Thank you so much.
You, Kishan.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Pleasure. Pleasure's mine.
Thank you. Global namaskar to everybody. Jai Swaminarayan.
Yes.
Welcome. Karibu, Kenya. Welcome to Nakuru town of the world famous flamingos, wildlife and birth country of the fastest runner in the world, Eliud Kipchoge. As always, Dr. Lalit, my cute cousin, and myself are super excited to welcome you all. Short introduction of Dr. Lalit is that he is a famous chiropractic, author, and world-class public speaker. He is also recipient of some awards, including the Marwa Award for journalism. Welcome the young and dynamic politician, Mr. Kishan Devani. He does not compromise his time when it is time to play with his son. Welcome to all here who are logged in on our Facebook Live and other places. Do share your page. Over to you, Lalit.
Thank you very much, Meena Ben, and a very warm welcome again. Meena Ben always wanted to put tilak on Krishna or Kishan. She finally got her way through. So there you go. Kishan, welcome on this session. And we are truly delighted to have you as an inspirational, motivational speaker today on our Zoom session. And we want to ask you the very first question. Is that okay to ask you a question, or do you want to start off with a few words?
No, please. I'm happy to go however you wish, but I'd like to thank both yourself and Meena Ben for the amazing work that you've been doing, especially during COVID, because and one of the major reasons why I'm here today is because of the work that you've been doing. And if you look at the people that have joined this Zoom, you will see that in a time where, through difficult times, through times where people have been lonely, where people have not been able to leave their homes, you have provided them with that peace and solace and that sort of ability to stay in touch with their community. Really, it's a really great job that you're doing with Minla, and it's a great pleasure to be here to support the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you.
good.
In fact, Kishan, we are truly delighted, just so that you know, we've been currently joined by our president of the Lohana community, United Kingdom, Mr. Sunilbhai Majitia.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sunil is a dear friend of mine. He's an absolute
Great.
gentleman, yeah.
And we are also accompanied by one of the top businessmen in Kenya, Mr. Manubhai Chandaria. Even though he's not in great health, but he makes a point to join into Minla Zoom session. So thank you very much. But moving forward, Kishan, thank you for praising us, because we are truly delighted to be doing such work. At the same time, when persons like yours comes on our Zoom sessions, we want to know what's the journey? How did you start this all? Because at a young age of 36, I believe, you've achieved so much in the political world, and not just in the political world, but in life in general. As the Zoom session unveils, we're going to find out a lot more about you. So first of all, I would like to ask you the question, Kishan, where did you start your journey? Please tell us about it.
Well, as you rightly pointed out, Doctor, I'm on the process of writing my memoirs. So I'm actually writing my story, and I feel a little bit humbled by that, because as you said, I'm 36, and 36 વર્ષ ના ઉંમરે તમને કોઈ પુસ્તક લખવાનું કહે, so you feel very taken back by that. You feel almost, really humbled by it.
What an honor.
Well, yeah, and actually, I was surprised myself when I got the offer, actually. But of course, my life has been very much inspired by various people, both from my mother to my grandmother to my wife currently. A lot of people in my life have played a big part in terms of inspiring where I stand today. But what fascinates young people in particular is the idea of actually hard work, because I fundamentally believe this. My guru is Pramukh Swami and Mahant Swami, which many of you have probably heard of from the Baps sect, and they have a beautiful motto that says hard work plus prayers equals success. Hard work alone is not good enough. Prayers are needed, of course, but just to pray and leave to God is not an option. Without the hard work, you will not achieve success. And so fundamentally, I've tried to imbibe that ethos, that motto in my life to be able to achieve. And so I am the son of refugees, as you kindly pointed out, Doctor, and I fundamentally come from a very stable middle class background, that I wasn't privately educated. I went to normal state school, but I always wanted to achieve the top. I wanted to be the top in my class. I wanted to be the top in my studies. Of course, at times it didn't work because I wasn't the most academic. I'm a very good speaker. I'm a very good orator, as you can hear. I enjoy that, but I wasn't the most academic. So I realized that I had to strive and I had to be the best at whatever I was good at. And I identified that at a very young age. I was very lucky that I had a lot of exposure. My parents were very good at sending me on travels. I spent 3 years of my life, which many people don't know, in India. So 8 વર્ષનો હતો ત્યારે હું 3 વર્ષ મને India, Bombay મોકલાવ્યા હતા, my parents, and I studied in Bombay. એટલે મને ગુજરાતી પણ વ્યવસ્થિત આવડે છે, લખતા આવડે છે, વાંચતા આવડે છે, અને હિન્દી પણ લખતા આવડે છે, વાંચતા આવડે છે. You'll hear about this later. I'm sure you'll ask this. And I also know a third language, which Doctor will ask me later on. I know, I'm aware of, he will be raising this later on. So I also know a third language. But my 3 years in India, and I say this to everyone, it's something interesting, and Tamaji viewers, they probably will understand this as well. I fundamentally believe those 3 years in India cemented my personality, number one, but it also allowed me to understand different people. It allowed me to understand how privileged we actually are in this country, and how I can relate to people from different backgrounds. Okay, and that allowed me to become a lot more streetwise. When you live in India, you become streetwise. There is no other way about saying it, right? And had I
Absolutely
just
right.
been brought up in my little, Northwest London bubble or Essex bubble, I was born in Essex, I really wouldn't be here where I am today. So I really thank my parents that they put me in the deep end in many ways, where I had to learn different languages, where I had to learn different, although we are Indian and our culture was there and we were religious, etc. But it's a different culture fundamentally from the work ethos, from your value system. It is different. And so I had to pick that all up at 8 years old. I had to learn 3 different languages from the scratch at the get-go. If you don't pass, you stay back a year. So from that age at 8 years old, I was put in I was in the pressure cooker, and that enabled me to strive. That enabled me to say, you know what, I'm going to fight everything. When I came back to the UK at about 11 and a half, 12, I thought this was a doddle. I came into schools here and I thought, simple વસ્તુ છે. ભણે છે સ્કૂલ ની અંદર તો અહીંયા મારતા નથી તમને, અહીંયા કઈ ખીજાતા નથી તમને. It's like a heavenly school, right? તો ભણતા કેમ નથી લોકો? Right, that was my first thing. Okay, what's going on here? So that was it was a really big culture shock in many ways, but actually I was able to fight through that. And to say that I haven't experienced racism is we all have. Let's face it. Be all very honest with each other. Probably everyone on this call has experienced a time where they felt different from the host community that they live in, whether that's in Africa, whether that's in the UK, in America, Canada, Europe, wherever you are, and actually for British Asians, for American Asians, or for American Indians, even when we go back to India, we often feel out of place, right? Because, when you go to an Indian shop in India, they'll charge you a different price than they'll charge Mr. Patel, who lives there, right? And so essentially we all feel like that, and we all have that feeling. And I experienced it, but I fought it. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to let that get me down. There are lots of my friends, unfortunately, that couldn't handle that, and they haven't progressed as much. And so what I fundamentally always say to people, and I really fundamentally believe this, is that it's not always about your academics. And I know a lot of our families, mothers, parents, fathers, will always say, કે તમે ભણો અને સારું ડિગ્રી લેવો અને તમને સારું નોકરી મળશે. 100% વસ્તુ સાચી હોય. 100% વસ્તુ સાચી છે. હું નથી કહેતો. And I agree with that. But actually, it is not all about your degree. It is not all about where you've studied. Because I have friends that have been to Oxbridge, Cambridge or Oxford, and got first-class degrees there. But unfortunately, some of them are jobless right now. Okay, some of them are jobless. And Doctor, you're a man of words. You know how to speak very proficiently. Sometimes it's about when you get into a room and how you speak to people, how you deal with people. I don't have half of those academics. Yes, I have 3 or 4 degrees. Yes, I went to good universities, undeniably. But actually, I haven't relied on my academics. A lot of it is your zaban. It's how you speak. It's how you behave with people, your etiquette with people, and also the personal relationships you can build. So, my journey has been quite sort of, from a very humble background, humble beginnings. I've managed to create, whatever small profile I've managed to create at the age of 36. I've been very fortunate. I've had very good people around me, both, people in the political world, in the charitable world, in the business world, whether that's in Africa, whether that's in India, whether that's in the UK. I've had a lot of support from great people around me that have also mentored me. And so I am a product of a lot of combinations of people. But of course, I have only reached here by sheer hard work. And to this day, I sleep on average around 4 hours a night. Okay. And to this day. Okay. And at a push, 4.5, I simply can't do more than that. And partly because I get the feeling that I'm wasting time. And I learned that from various political people who have gone into their autobiographies and said, they've only slept 3.5 years for 13, 14 years while they're prime minister. There are many politicians that do that and have done that. And actually you can see why. And I'm sure Prime Minister Modi falls under that category. I know Margaret Thatcher fell under that category. I know various other political figures do fall under that category where they constantly work because their mind is constantly ticking. And of course, I haven't come to politics from business. I haven't come to politics from any other field. Although I was a teacher, so I did teach before I went into politics more. I was a teacher. I taught Hinduism. My subject was, I studied law for my first degree, but I taught religious studies at GCSE and A level, at the only faith school, the only Hindu faith school in Western Europe until recently, which was the Swaminarayan School, which was run by BAPS, which many of you probably know. I was head of religious studies there. Pramukh Swami had asked me, through our Swamis, through our Santos, to say that I should work there, and I obliged. And it was the years of formation for me. That was from 2009 onwards. For a few years, I taught there. And that's what really gave me the buzz of public speaking, of getting out there, talking on stage. Although I'm reminded very, very, very profoundly from my mother that when I was 6 years old, I got up in the stage of 500 people and I spoke without any preparation for 10 minutes. And my head teacher said to my mother, this boy could speak till the cows come home. And he said, he gave me a certificate at 6 years old. And he said, this boy, you watch him, either he'll be in number 10 one day, or he'll be doing something in the public eye. And lo and behold, and God bless his soul, I don't think that head teacher's there anymore. But I have that certificate still that said a commendation for or accreditation for public speaking. At 6 years old, I got that, and I get it partly from my mother. My mother is a passionate public speaker. She enjoys it. Reminds me very much of Mina Ben, actually, because her name is also Mina Ben, and many of you know her because she's quite active on Facebook, Mina Hindocha. So I've got this in my blood of wanting to meet people, speak on stage, all these types of things. So what I did was I nurtured that. I realized I had a natural ability. I wouldn't say talent, but a natural ability. And I need to nurture that. I need to grow that. And actually, this is where some young people, and when I go to speak at universities or to young people, they often have a lot of talent. And your children, your grandchildren, they will have lots and lots of talent. But often they don't identify it themselves. And all they need is someone to say to them, by golly, you're very good at that. If it's painting, for example, say, you're very good at painting. Have you ever thought about taking a look at that? You're very good at drawing. Have you ever thought about architecture? You're very good at speaking. Have you ever thought about being a lawyer? And actually, it's not actually telling them what to do, but it's identifying what they're good at. And sometimes they may not even realize it themselves. You might know it, they may be very good at physical exercise. Are they good at sports, etc.? And young people, you find all they need is that little bit of guidance. It's not you telling them what to do. It's that ability for you to say, you know what, you've got this talent. Why don't you nurture it? So I love to do these types of things. I used to sit on the board of an international college. I do a lot of work with international schools, universities. I'm on the board of IMA, the International Academic Management Association, based in Delhi. And I do a lot of things in education still, because that's really where my passion lies. And of course, I do a lot of work with charity organizations in fundraising for them, with organizations like ActionAid, where we've raised, millions of pounds across the world. I do a lot of fundraising for political causes, etc. as well. So I have a very vast array of work, and I advise people on political strategy, on communications, on PR, on marketing, all these types of things, which is my forte, which I very much enjoy. And so, yeah, I'm in a very blessed position in my life at 36 years old. I don't think many people could say they are. And for that, I thank the blessings of my parents, the blessings of my guru and my Lord Swaminarayan, who's played a huge part in my life, whom without I would not be here talking to you, quite frankly. In 2005, I nearly lost my life from meningoencephalitis, which hopefully when all of you purchase my book, when it's out in the next year or two, you'll see that I nearly died from meningoencephalitis, a very rare condition. It happens to only 1 in 250,000 people, according to the NHS website. Very, very rare. Encephalitis, as you know, doctor, is a swelling of the brain. And we never actually found out what caused it. They never found out. They did every single test on the planet, but what they were amazed by, as you know, that people usually have a disability once this happens. They usually either they pass away, or they get paralyzed, or they lose sensation somewhere, or their hearing is affected, or their eyesight is affected. Lo and behold, by the grace of my guru and Maharaj, nothing happened, nothing at all, to the point where I got better in about 7 weeks, which it was unheard of. And then I qualified with a law degree 2 years later. I went back to see, the people that were treated me, and they couldn't believe that I was the same person. They were just absolutely flabbergasted. And so again, and there were very much, I had a lot of divine moments at that time, you know, which hopefully you can all read in my book. I had, you know, Bhagwan mane ghana bada parcha pan dekhaira chhe itna, you know, Pramukh Swami Swaminarayan Bhagwan parcha dekhaira chhe mara jivan ni andar. In my book you'll hopefully read all this, but actually for me, what I'm trying to say to you is that I shouldn't be here today. And I fundamentally believe that I shouldn't be here today, and I am, and that's why I make sure that every minute that I'm here, I'm not only living for myself, and quite frankly, I try to put that behind, but I try to live for the betterment of society and for others, because I fundamentally believe, you know, we as a body, as a group of people, are interconnected. We have to live with one another. We have to work with one another. And that's why peace, prosperity, tolerance is the way forward. So I hope that's a little bit of a glimpse about me, without going into profound detail, because I know you've got lots of questions still coming. So
yes. No, this is amazing where you started your journey from and what challenges you've been through. Obviously, not only health, but all sorts of other challenges. You just earlier said, Kishan, that you have been through educational system. You went through a state school system. It wasn't a private school system. But one of your core beliefs is that you believe in fair education system. How would you define fair education system?
I think it's a very, very good question, Doctor. It really is a really good question, because, you know, I found, having gone through the state sector, and I did go to some very excellent state schools, let me not deny that, right? I went to one of the very few boarding state schools in this country. I didn't board there. I was a day boarder, so I was in and out every day, so I wasn't boarding at all. I was a day student, but there was only, I think at the time, there was only 6 of these state-funded boarding schools, which means you pay for the boarding if you wish to, but the school is feeless, right? And there's only about 6 at the time. When I studied, there were 6 in the country. There might be less now, I don't know. But what I would like to see, and that's why I'm a fundamental believer in the state school education system, you know, even with my son going forward, you know, I'm at crossroads whether I would put him into independent school yet. I don't know, right? It's something I've not even thought about yet. He's still only 7 months. But actually, you know, my fundamental belief is that we should create a system where our state schools, government schools, get to the level of private schools. Now, I can point you out to some amazing grammar schools, for example's sake, which you are fully aware, because I know some that are very close to where you live, Doctor, right? That are profoundly good schools, okay? Yes. Without mentioning their names. And they're state-run schools, okay? In fact, they are better than many private schools, because if you look at their Oxbridge intake, it's actually higher than many private schools out there. So there is a idea, and there is an actual argument to say, why can state schools not become as good as private schools? And actually, in some cases, I believe they're better. Like NHS, like our public health system, in my view, I would, if I was in an emergency, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the medical expert. Yeah.
Can we hold that question? Because yes. That's my next question. On
okay, fine. So for education, I fundamentally believe, can we get a system that is as good, you know, in fact, better, okay, because I would say certain private schools are not very good, if I'm going to be honest with you. So can we get it to the stage where all state schools are at the level of the Eatons and the Harrows and the Merchant Taylors and the Haberdashers of this world, or the rugby schools of this world? And in an ideal world for me, I would love to see that in my country, right? I would love to see that in Britain. And I think if we have the right educational policies, and often if you take politics out of education, if you take the politicians out of education and you create a cross-party approach with educational professionals, you will get a system that is more workable, more efficient, and more in line with what pupils need in our country, and also actually internationally. I believe this could be worked internationally as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very fair comment, because unfortunately, it becomes a situation where the privileged can go to the private schools and get that education, and the not so privileged would end up with other school education, whereby some of the state schools, as you said, are even better than the private schools, but far and few. And
Yeah.
we need the quality of education, the quality of teachers, the quality of students also going to those schools. So it is a very interesting way of saying a fair education system. There is definitely work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And we hope, certainly, I'm in agreement with you that there is a very, very fair education system in this country, hopefully moving towards it.
Yeah.
You touched one of the questions which was my next question. You also mentioned about health. Now, you personally, having been through the meningoencephalitis and were treated, I believe, was it in the National Health
Yes,
Service?
very much so, very much so. Yeah, and yeah, please carry on, sorry.
Yeah, getting that fair healthcare system, which is currently under a lot of strain because of the pandemic. But even prior to that, there was a huge strain on the National Health Service, the NHS. How would you say that we should make that into a fairer healthcare system for the public at large? Because right now, if one doesn't have a private medical insurance, you may miss out on your treatment.
I think this is one of the most pertinent questions of what in my view, you denote a civilized society and a society that values human life, to a society, quite frankly, that has a lot to achieve in valuing human life, okay? And I really fundamentally believe we are blessed to have the National Health Service in our country.
Absolutely right.
Blessed. And I can tell you now that when you go into a hospital and you spend a night in a hospital and you leave a hospital, and if they invoiced you for £1,500 for one night in hospital, I would love to see the people's faces when that happened, because actually this is what happens in certain countries in the world. Okay, it's appalling, it's frightful, it's horrible, and in my view, it is one of the worst things. It's a human crisis, actually, one of the worst things in the world. And so we are blessed, Doctor, to have this system. Firstly, I'd love to say that. And I'd like to say that we are indebted to the NHS workers who both not only saved my life in 2005, but my mother, who's like, who I've seen on the deathbed, who had 48 hours to live in 1993 and 92, 93. And, the NHS saved her, and she had an operation in the private sector before they made a mistake in the private sector, and it was the NHS that reversed everything and saved her life. Okay, so I know some people that will give everything in their will to the NHS because they've survived, because of the NHS, not because of their kids. They've survived because of the NHS. And my wife had TB, and she survived because of the NHS. I survived because of meningoencephalitis. My son was born in the NHS, right? So I'm a big advocate of the NHS. And yes, there are things that we could change. Yes, there are things we need to work on. Of course, our healthcare system isn't the best in the world. By no means am I saying that, but I can tell you something. If you have if you need open heart surgery at 3 o'clock in the morning, the NHS is the place you want to be in the world, right? It isn't in any other hospital in the world. It is the NHS where you want to be at 3 o'clock in the morning, because the last thing they'll ask you is what cards have you got in your pocket? That's the last thing they'll ask you. The first thing they'll do is to save your life. And that is why we are blessed to have the NHS. And I feel very passionately about it, as you can see from the way I'm talking. But of course, politically, my party has always said that we have a policy that is saying that we need more funding in the NHS. We need to fund it, in my view, double what we're using, right? We really need to put money in. Now, I think we can do that by a simple policy, by a penny in a pound of income tax. So for every pound we pay on income tax, we're saying one more penny from every single person on each pound that they earn will fund the NHS billions of pounds in this country. Okay, wow. If you do that, all right. Now, this is a policy that my party has been talking about for some time now, a penny in the pound of income tax. Okay, the exact figures of what it raises, I'm not quite sure, because I haven't come fully briefed on the topic. But essentially, this is a really good policy, and people like this policy. And it's one that we stand by, and I'm sure in the next manifesto we'll be talking about this as well, because it's fair. It is fair, because even if you are a multi-millionaire and you're living in a gated house in northwest London, or you're living in a gated property in Regent's Park, or or in Knightsbridge or Kensington. When you need that emergency care, you will be going to the UCL hospital. You will be going to Guy's Hospital. You will be going to Chelsea and Westminster. If you have a child and they have a problem, you will be going to Great Ormond Street, first of all, right? And so, it is a duty, it's our fundamental duty as a citizen of our country to fund our NHS properly, because that is the institution that keeps us healthy and keeps us safe. Now, of course, during the pandemic, unfortunately, this government has treated the NHS appallingly, if I'm going to be frank with you, and I'm trying not to get political here, but the 1% nurse pay rise last week, our દેશની અંદર nurses પોતાનું જીવ દઈ દે છે, પોતાનું જાન દઈ દે છે, અને we have a prime minister that is now saying કે તમને 1% pay rise આપશું, and he goes and he then spends millions of pounds on decorating his house, his flat in number 10 Downing Street. I'm sorry, but there is something morally wrong with that. Something that we must challenge. And for me, that I'm very passionate about that. So, yeah.
Sure. No, I totally understand. And without getting very political about it, the National Health Service has looked after, has continued to look after the people to their best until they got so much stress because of the funding that got limited, and also due to the increase in demand on the National Health Service by a lot more people than we used to have in Britain before.
Yeah.
So there's several factors that have taken place, but yes, I totally agree that the national healthcare system is one of, if not the best ones, but one of the better ones that we have, where, as you said, when you have a heart attack, you go to a national healthcare hospital, they will look after you first. They won't ask you what money you're coming from or how much do you have in your pocket. So from that, definitely a big, big thing for the National Healthcare Service. Now, going a little personal on this question with the National Health Service, and I hope you don't mind discussing something, Kishan, here that you have recently gone through. Your family has recently gone through and very much helped by the National Health was the COVID, which unfortunately you were also a victim of. Would you share with the audience about this? And before you share with the audience, may I request to the audience that if you have any questions for our lovely guest speaker, Kishan Devani, please put them on the chat box. I personally will make sure that that question is asked if it's relevant. We won't get into politics. However, if there's a relevant question for Kishan Devani, please do put it on the chat. I will entertain it. Kishan, moving on the COVID aspect of what you and your family recently went through, would you share that with us, please?
So we obviously we started off with a, what I would call a semi-lockdown back last year, as you remember, Doctor. And
yes.
Again, we won't go into the politics of that or what happened there. I'll be very personal about what I went through. And of course, that lasted for a couple of months. And then if you remember back in the summer, everything was open again. And then we had this, these amazing deals by our chancellor, who thought it was a great idea to give everyone free meals on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatever day it was. And buy one, get one or whatever, right? And of course, what happened? We all remember what happened. We had bursting restaurants. We had bursting whatever at the rims. We had pubs open. Everyone was out, drinking, etc., etc. And he did it primarily for the economy, fully, but actually saw no consideration to the spread of COVID. Okay, and what a lot of people don't know, and that although through this entire lockdown, my government, or our government in the UK, I wouldn't say my government because I live in the UK, it's not my government because it's not my party, but it is my government because I'm a citizen of this country. But this government in play right now had a rule, and this is God's honest truth. Go and have a look at it if you don't believe me. Go on the gov.uk website, you'll see it. That if you are having a business meeting, if you are having a business lunch, okay, now think about this. You can meet up to 30 people in a restaurant setting. Okay, now many people don't know this, Maybe people didn't know this. Yeah, you could meet in a setting where you can say that you had a business meeting or a business lunch. Okay, all right. Now, of course, right now things are locked down and things are. But when things opened up, this was the rule. When I couldn't go and see my own uncle, my own mama, my own, other people that were very close to me, I couldn't go and see my own family, right? And I couldn't do that, but I could go and meet Mr. Smith or Mr. Patel, who I have no connection with, and I could go and sit with them and have a lunch if I'm talking business, if I'm talking about work. Now, you can imagine what happened during those 2 or 3 months. People like me were going out. Now, I live in an intergenerational household. I live in a joint family. My mother's here with us, my brother's here with us, my wife, etc. And so I was going out all the time once those 2 or 3 months were open, and I was meeting, I was doing, I was obviously socially distancing. I was doing all the right things, mask wearing, socially distancing, you do everything. I was paranoid, sanitizing every 5 minutes. People thought I'd gone crazy. I was actually double masking during those times, even earlier, because I was just so paranoid. I was so paranoid because I was worried I'd bring COVID home. My mum gets it, she's 67. I had a baby who was 4 months at the time, 3 or 4 months at the time, right? Especially when COVID was increasing. And fundamentally, I didn't trust the government's plan. I knew that they really didn't have a plan. And we could see that after 120,000 deaths in this country.
Okay, Kishan, we'll keep it to the COVID question simply because we don't want to get into any political accusations or anything. Because we try to keep it very balanced. Just make it into a very inspirational, motivational thing. And discuss your COVID experience and how the NHS actually helped you.
I contracted COVID because I was on a business meeting. Actually, I was in a meeting that I was permitted to have, and I came home, got COVID. I then obviously I developed symptoms within about 48 to 72 hours. They started off pretty mild at the beginning when I got a lot of fatigue. My body was pretty much towards the 72-hour mark, I really lost energy, finding it difficult to even go upstairs. And then I realized something's wrong. So I said, I need to isolate because I had a feeling that something's just not right. So I then got tested. I got the test within 24 hours back. I was obviously positive, but my biggest fear was, by golly, mum's going to get this, right? And that you can imagine, petrified. And lo and behold, she went for a test. She got it. And within 72 hours of that test, she developed extremely bad COVID symptoms, to the point for 24 days she couldn't leave her bed. Wow. She couldn't get out. She couldn't go from her room to the toilet. On one occasion at night, she was almost begging us to say, can we go to the hospital? I was in touch with our doctor, and who was fantastic again. The NHS GP service was amazing. And they kept on advising me that check her observations. Is her oxygen okay? Is her oxygen saturation level okay through the oximeter? Is she breathing okay? Etc. etc. But my mother was having a lot of nausea, a lot of diarrhea, and she was losing a lot of water in her body. So the biggest fear was actually she might get dehydrated and just pretty much knock out. And so I remember that entire day I stood in a room while I had COVID. And my wife then later got diagnosed, but my wife is sort of half my size and half my weight as well. So she's very, very healthy, very thin. And so she really didn't, nothing really happened to her in terms of symptoms. But my son, who is 4 years old, 4 months, probably got it. The doctor said they couldn't test him. He was too young to really get tested. But, they said that it was impossible for him not to have got it because he was the close proximity that he had. He 99.9% did get it. But my mom, that night, I remember pretty much just staying with her the entire day and night and just giving her water. And I said, I'm adamant I'm not letting you get into that hospital, because as soon as you get into that hospital, I've heard the stories. I know what's happening, right? And it's not the hospital's fault. It's not the doctor's fault, but things seem to be happening when you get into that hospital. And you'll probably know better than me, doctor, that there is
unfortunately, that was the situation with the virus. It was wildfire.
Yes.
And yes, agreed. If you can avoid the hospital at that time, one should.
Yeah, and so we tried and we did it and we worked through it. And, till this day, this was in November, of last year, my mum still has long COVID symptoms. She's tired. She she often goes to sleep in the afternoon, and she's like Minaben. She's a force of nature. She would never sleep, right? She'd work 24 hours a day. But these types of things are happening, which was just unheard of. She had symptoms like you'd never hear of, like itching on the body. Okay, itching, right,
Sure.
all over her body. And they tested her for liver functionality. They said it was all fine. So the doctor said, well, actually, this is just a COVID symptom. Now, this continues. This type of thing is continuing. So really, I don't believe that people really understand the virus very well yet. I think we're much better than we were last year. Of course we are. We've created some amazing vaccinations. And one great thing that is happening in this country, it's not all doom and gloom, is that we have a great vaccination program. The NHS have taken it by the neck. And of course, this government have driven that undeniably, but the NHS have taken it by the neck and said, you know what, let's do this. Let's get the vaccinations out, near enough 30 million people soon. It's great. It's really great. That's coming up to 50% of our population, and the vulnerable are being done. So this is really good news, positive news for us in Britain, and we should be proud of it. But actually, I got an article this morning. It's fascinating, as we're all of Indian origin, and many of them are in India. But India, apne gana vaccine mokleva. They're sending in the process, I think, 10 million vaccines. We're purchasing from India, the AstraZeneca vaccine that is made in India. So it's a great feeling of pride that even India is is engaging with us as the UK. Some of our vaccines over the next month or two, I presume from this article, I don't know how true, I haven't verified it yet, but if the article stands true, some of us will be taking AstraZeneca from India, which is a moment of pride and great, pride, because actually, if you look at India now, it has donated millions and millions of donations and I know in Kenya recently, because your High Commissioner in Kenya, who's a good friend of Minaben's as well, Dr. Virendra Paul, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but he received vaccinations in Kenya as well. I think if only last week, if I'm not mistaken.
That's excellent. Minaben is nodding her head to say yes.
Yeah, and it shows great. I mean, આપણી માટે બહુ ગર્વની વાત કહેવાય કે ભારત દેશ જે છે અત્યારના it's giving and it's providing vaccines to Canada, places like Canada, which is a real matter of pride. I hope that the Indian vaccine system is being rolled out just as good, and they're not just simply sending it abroad. So, I mean, I have no knowledge of that, but I hope that's picking up domestically as well for them. I know some of my own family members that are in India, my in-laws, etc. They've already started to get vaccinated, so it is happening. It is happening out there, which is great news. But I just thought when I got that article, I thought it was a moment of pride that this is happening.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think this is where I think all the countries are coming in to help each other, and especially India being on such a stance and trying to help each and every, I would say, continent to get their vaccines.
Yes.
So yeah, a great article. Kishan, it came to my notice this morning too. So thank you for sharing that. Now, moving on from COVID, moving on from your education, there was something that I had picked up about you. And while we were conversing prior, was that you mentioned something and it really caught my eye and my thought stuck there. And I thought, I'm going to ask you this question at the Zoom session, and I want to get an answer from you.
Okay.
And a genuine and a true answer from you.
Well, one thing you've noticed, I do speak my mind. I never hold back. I'm a man.
I know that. And as I said, speak your mind, but we'll keep the politics out of it.
Of course.
The purpose of this is just getting to know who you are and what has been so inspirational about you. So that's my next question to you. You stood up in politics. You stood in the most rural area where there are more sheep grazing on the farms than human beings residing there. There are 60,000 sheep grazing there, and there are only 40,000 humans there. And this was in Wales, where there is a population, the Asian population is very much in a minority. You stood and you were chosen in the selection process. How did that happen? Share your story with this. You've got about 3 or 4 minutes, because I've got a few questions to ask.
Please. No, I'll be very quick. Well, the answer to that is, again, it summarizes me. I'm the type of person that I always try and punch above my weight. I always try and go and do things that people will think, oh, by golly, how did he manage to do that? Because that's just me. I like to try and excel myself. and push myself. And so I stood in the constituency of Montgomeryshire. Now, many of you won't even have heard of this, Montgomeryshire. And have a look online, because it is profoundly, it is the most rural constituency, the most rural area in the whole of the United Kingdom, even more than in Scotland or Northern Ireland, etc. And as the doctor said, it's got more sheep in than human beings, okay? And as you can imagine, I was in a minority, and fundamentally I was in a minority to the point where, there are probably only, and I think I looked at the census, there was about maybe, I think, 10 people or 15 people that are of Hindu background in the entire constituency of 40,000 people, okay, of our own faith background. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it was an amazing journey, and I got selected there. I applied for the seat as parliament, prospective parliamentarians do through your party political process. I did all of that. I got in front of my people, of the membership in Montgomeryshire, who I was the only Asian person in the room, and I was up against 4 different candidates who were all white, who were all connected to Wales, some of whom spoke Welsh, some of whom have local connections. And I spoke, and I got up and I delivered the speech of my life, I've been told by some of those people. I got up and I spoke for 20 minutes. And at the end of the 20 minutes, I had people who I had never met in my life come up to me and shake my hand and say, "Sir, we believe you can win this seat for us, and you'll bring this seat back to the Liberal Party after X amount of years." Okay. And that's the reason we voted for you. After I got selected, they came and told me this. They said, "You know what? We didn't look at your color. We didn't look where you came from. We didn't look the fact that you know nothing about the constituency." This was the first day I had visited the constituency, and I'd got selected as prospective MP for the area. Not a single person knew me in that patch. But when I went into that room, I believed I could win that selection. And I remember telling my wife in the hotel room before going there, she said, "What are we doing here?" She says, "There's nothing here. Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Look, I haven't come here just to come a second. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to go in that room and win this, right?" And lo and behold, that's what I did. And I'm not saying it because out of pride or ego at all. In fact, I totally don't like those types of things. My guru teaches me the total opposite. But I'm telling you, because the young people like to hear this in particular, that there is nothing that they cannot achieve by going into that room, knowing that you are the only person that is from your background. But it also shows something very beautiful about the British people at their core. The British people are good, tolerant people. Okay, what is happening, unfortunately, in this country right now or in the world is the rise of populism. Okay, and that will slowly go, I believe. Again, we will be back to where we should be. Intolerance, social justice, equality, all these beautiful values that I believe in, because I really believe the good British people in their core, at their hearts, are not prejudiced, right? And I'm a clear example of that. By selecting me, that shows you that, they had no prejudice in selecting me. And that was so lovely to see, really lovely to see.
Sure. No, that's amazing. I once again picked up on something that you said. You did not give up. What you want, you went for it. Yes. Now that takes me to my other question, and having stood in that kind of a situation and won the seat, you have actually in your younger years changed 7 schools and yet achieved 14 GCSEs. A fighter, a go-getter, a hard worker, or what? What would you say to this?
A very pushy mother. That's what I'm going to say to that. No, look, I never took that as an excuse, because actually I was always told that's no excuse. You've got to do well. And lo and behold,
I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop you just for a second. In the audience, I saw a lady, Madhu Popat. She just laughed out and said, "Yes, a pushy mother," right?
Well, I'm sure people can relate to that, especially if you are mothers. And the answer to that, really, frankly, is that I was, look, even though I wasn't born into privilege, my mother would always get tutors in. I would always be helped and stuff like that, to her own detriment, actually. She was going through a very financially difficult time at the time, and yet she would pay from her own sort of, in many ways, benefits actually at times for tutors. And lo and behold, that did help me. She obviously saw that I had the ability, and she tried to help, what she could do within her power for me to be able to access that education. But fundamentally, there was always something in me that said, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'll do it properly. If I'm going to go for it, I'm going to do, and also I was always looking up to people that were doing better, which is really interesting, because, I think you can cap yourself sometimes. And I always, when I speak to students in particular, I say to them, you know what, you aim for an A star. Always aim for an A star. And if you've got grandkids or children, tell them this. Aim for an A star, okay? Because if you aim for an A star, you might come out with an A, or you might come out with a B. But if you aim for an A, you're most certainly never going to get an A. You're probably going to get a B or a C, okay? You aim higher. Look, you may get an A if you put the work in and you do it, but actually, why not aim for the highest that you can possibly achieve? Now, for some people, that might be a B. Well, then aim for a B. For some people, that might be a C. If they're coming from an E for a D, then aim for a C. Aim for the highest potentiality that you can achieve, and you will get it. But your aim should be high, and your goal should be high. There's no harm in dreaming, no harm whatsoever, right? Some of the most successful people in the world have dreamt, but then once they've dreamt, they've actioned, right? And that's the key thing. They don't simply just dream.
Absolutely. So aim higher.
Yes.
And I've also heard a statement, Kishan, people who don't have a goal or an aim, they wander aimlessly. And absolutely. So set a high goal, and that is what you were pushed into, thought about, whatever it was, but it was your driven work that you were doing.
Yeah, no, very much so. And again, I've been, I had some amazing mentors. The Swamis at my temple have been an inspiration to me, a guide to me, and continually still do so. I call them up pretty much every day for guidance. There are 2 or 3 Swamis that are based in London in particular, who I have regular daily contact with. And when I'm in issues, when I want advice, when I want both advice in career, in personal matters, in all matters, they're there at the end of the phone. And I think that spiritual side of me gives me that equilibrium, tries to allow me to get that equilibrium. I try to look at the life of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. If you've never read the life of Pramukh Swami, I suggest that you even just read 1 page of his life. An inspirational individual, created Delhi Akshardham, created the Neasden Temple, the Nairobi Mandir. We have a big Nairobi temple. We've got innumerable temples in America. We now have the Akshardham being made in New Jersey, in New York, one of the largest. That will be the most significant temple in the world once it's open in the next year or 2. So his life has been an inspiration to me, and I constantly, when I'm at stages of life where I'm not sure, when I'm at crossroads, I simply look at his life and say, well, how would Pramukh Swami have handled that? What would Pramukh Swami have done in that scenario? Now I've been blessed that I have a regular contact with Param Pujya Mahant Swami Maharaj, who's in the place, in the same position as Pramukh Swami was, and who's now our guru. And I regularly speak with him. I receive lots of voice notes and ashirwads from him every other week, and I'm blessed to have that, because that allows me to really think clearly, allows me to have that spiritual side, to connect to myself, whether it's through meditation, through my personal puja, and allows me to be grounded in a world where, let's face it, it's very easy to start flying and thinking you're very special, especially in the public life, in the public world, in the public realm. But actually, when you realize you're mere mortals, right? You're mere mortals, then you realize that actually all of this means nothing. And all I always like to do is I like to go to the prasang in the Mahabharata where Yaksh asked Yudhishthira a question, and the question was really beautiful. Kim Ascharyam, he says, Kim Ascharyam in Sanskrit, which means what is the most wonderful, amazing thing in this universe? Okay, and Prashnanu Uttar Emnati Apta, okay, India is so beautiful, Bharat is beautiful, Hindustan is beautiful. So the rivers, the mountains, the lakes, the beauty of India, Emnati Keta. The answer that was given, something so beautiful. He says that the Ascharya Janak Ghatna is, the Ascharya Janak thing, the most surprising thing, the most amazing thing in the world is that all of us know that this world is perishable. We all know that apne badane mrutyu thawanu che. બધાને ખબર છે આ વસ્તુ. We all know we are going to die. Okay? Yet, we live our lives as though as we were never going to die. શું કહે છે કે we live like as if we are never going to die. આપણે એમ જ જીવીએ છીએ કે જેમ આપણે હંમેશા અમર જ રહેવાના છીએ. That's the first thing he says. The second thing he says, so he says that's the first amazing thing about the human race. કે મને મનુષ્યનું આ વસ્તુ નથી સમજાતું. પછી બીજું વસ્તુ એમ કહે છે કે the other second thing I don't understand is that when death comes upon us, and he uses the word garden in Sanskrit, when the death comes upon us, our garden, our house, then we behave as though death has only come to us. જ્યારે આપણા કુટુંબની અંદર મૃત્યુ આવે છે, આપણા સગા સંબંધી પ્રત્યે, આપણા જે હેતવાળા, પ્રીતિવાળા માણસો હોય, એમને જ્યારે મૃત્યુ થાય છે, ત્યારે આપણે એમ વર્તીએ છીએ કે ખાલી આપણા ઘરની અંદર જ કે આપણા આંગણની અંદર જ મૃત્યુ આવ્યું છે. એ મને મનુષ્યનું સૌથી આશ્ચર્યજનક ઘટના વસ્તુ લાગે છે. Now, what he meant by that is essentially we as human beings live in an illusion. So I'm fully prepared and I'm fully understanding in my own understanding of the world I live in that all of this essentially means nothing. I'm simply a humble servant of society, and whatever little change I can bring, like Gandhiji brought, be the change you'd like to see in the world. I fundamentally believe in that, and I hope કે મારા જીવન દ્વારા એક માણસને પણ પ્રેરણા મળે તો મારું ધન્ય જીવન કહેવાય. બીજું તો there's nothing else that I can really add to what I would for further in terms of what I'm sure you're going to ask me lots more questions, but yes, I just want you to give it a fair flavor of who I am as a human being, that I come, although I'm doing politics, although I'm in public life, I'm very much grounded in my spiritualism. I'm very much grounded in my faith in God. And the ability of I love Sanskrit as a language, as you might even ask later on, but it's a personal passion to me.
You're leading into all the questions that I wanted to ask you, because the spirituality was a question that I was going to ask you anyway. But very nicely you've covered it, so we'll move on to the next question now. And so that was your hard work, your determination. It's just simply because if you say everything, I have nothing to ask you. So we'll try to stick to the question. If I ask, then that way at least we get the answer to the question, and then we move on to the next one. Simply because I think there's so much about you that we would love to know. But if it just comes out, then it's one of those things. So if we can stick to the question if I ask you, so that other questions can be asked along the way. So my next question goes to you, Kishan, in the terms of, you were hardworking. You earlier mentioned you speak English, you speak Gujarati. It's basically the third language, which is Sanskrit. Now that is truly amazing, because that is quite a founding language, if you may say, a difficult one to learn, but you are saying you can read it, write it, speak it. How did that come about?
Well, speaking Sanskrit is actually very difficult. And speaking, it's not as spoken. It's very, very rarely spoken. It's spoken amongst very, very high academic Sanskrit speakers, but in mainly in India, but in some university circles in the world to speak. But of course, shloks, of course, carrying out certain pujas, certain vidhis, I'm very versed in that. But the reading and writing came about from my time in India, actually, because I learned the Devanagari script there, which is the Hindi script, what you use in modern day Hindi, because it comes directly from Sanskrit, as you're fully aware. Now, I'm actually more proficient in the reading and writing of Hindi than I am in Gujarati. So my Hindi is actually ati shuddha compared to my Gujarati, actually, because I formally trained in Hindi. I didn't formally train in Gujarati. My Gujarati was very much more colloquial. It was done more through the mandir connections and sort of family type of connections. But and I picked up Gujarati from my Hindi writing. So Sanskrit I learned there, but I also was very blessed, as I said, due to the mandir. From the age of 14, 15, I wasn't born into the Swaminarayan faith. I wasn't born into the Pramukh Swami's faith. I was born a Pushti Margi. I was born in the faith of Srinathji, predominantly. My mother also believed in Mataji quite a bit. But I fundamentally wasn't from the Swaminarayan community. It was I that met. I had a road to Damascus. I had a prasang in my life where Pramukh Swami played a part in it. I went to the temple in Neasden, and I had a religious experience, almost a miraculous experience. And at that point of time, I almost converted myself. Overnight, I stopped eating meat because I did eat meat when I was growing up, and I left at the age
Okay,
of.
we are going into the religious side of the
Yes, sorry.
question.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, call me back.
If you
Bring
hold
me
that
back.
thought just for a few minutes,
Yes, okay. Bring me back to the.
Sanskrit, the
Yes,
Sanskrit part.
so the Sanskrit. So because of that, I got involved in the temple, and every year I would spend 6 or 7. I'm glad you did what you just did there, Lalit, because it's good to really
Kishan.
back it. No, it's good. It's very good. So 6 or
It's just that
7.
because of the Sanskrit language, I
Yes.
just had a couple questions. Otherwise, we're again diverting into an area.
Yes. So
With the
6 or 7
Sanskrit-
weeks. Yes, 6 or 7 weeks of the year, I would stay in a village called Sarampur in India, which is where our swamis are trained. So when people go from the UK to become a swami, they go and live there, and they get trained to do that. And there, Sanskrit is taught. There, the Bhagavad Gita is taught. There, everything is taught. So I was blessed to live with these swamis for periods of time every single year, and I would learn from the Santo. I would learn with the swamis every single year, and that again formulated my life. I also learned a lot of public speaking there because of that. Because they were teaching how to do kathas and stuff like that, and I learned all of that, and I was very much grounded. But it's quite amazing. I'm an Essex boy. I'm an Essex Harlow boy, right? And you put me in Harlow, and I can talk like an Essex boy, to be honest with you, right? But so I have that. I have a really interesting sort of mixture, a confluence of personalities in many ways, I suppose, and parts of my personality.
Okay, as we are quite running out of time, and time never stops. It always keeps ticking for us. So I have a couple more questions. If I can restrict those answers, to the question and to about a couple minutes for each question, then we can cover those questions in a nice way. Now, there is something about you. There's something about you that is very special that I think most people know, but some may not know. This passion for cricket.
Yeah.
Kishan, I have heard, and I hope this is true, that out of the 48 cricket test matches, you've been able to go to 27 of those and enjoyed them. What and when did this passion of cricket start?
So this was 40. So out of the 48 World Cup matches in 2019, we had the World Cup in the UK, which many of you probably remember. And 48 games, 27 games, 27 games. I said to everyone, you know what? I'm not working. I'm just going to go watch the cricket for these 48 games. And I was blessed to go to the final, both the semi-finals, the quarterfinal, pretty much every single game. I went to every India game, pretty much every England game, and of course the final where England fantastically won. It's a shame it wasn't an India-England final. That'd be amazing. I don't know who I would support because I always fail the Tebbit test, the Norman Tebbit test, because I always end up supporting India. Even though this time round I was very pleased and I was supporting England all the way at the last World Cup. But yeah, I have a passion for cricket that stems from probably before my birth. Actually, I come from a cricketing family, which many of you may know. Those of you that are from Kenya, je tame Kenya wara cho, tame mara masa ne orakta so. Kishore Vasani hata actually Uganda mata Lugazima, and Pachi, he became the cricket captain of East Africa. He was a really profound Chinaman bowler, really one of the best in the world. He played against Nawab Patode. He played against Sunil Gavaskar. He was friends with all of them. He was a remarkable cricketer at the time. He came to play at Lord's in against the MCC back in the 60s, I think, as well. And so it runs in my blood. His son then became a very good cricketer locally in the UK, and his grandson actually played for South England. He did South England trials, so he was very good. Ross Vasani, his name is, and who's actually, I think, whose grandmother is actually listening to this, who my Masi is actually on this call, if I'm not mistaken. She's watching on Facebook. Sadla Vasani, if she's there, have a look. She might be, but so it runs in my family, this passion. So, my father loved cricket. We just got a huge passion for it. My wife being from India, cricket is something that everyone loves. And so I've got this passion, but I played cricket as well to a decent level. I trialed for Essex when I was younger. I did a bit of sort of spin bowling, left leg spin I even played some little games for under 13s in Essex as well. But, when I went to India from the age of 8 to 11, I realized, by golly, my cricket isn't very good. Because in India, even your street cricket, your village cricket is phenomenal. There's just so much talent there. And so it was almost putting me, I put myself down and I thought, you know what, I can't compete with this. And I put it on a back burner. But my passion for watching games were remarkable. So why I did those games, and back to your question, why I made sure that I did those games, because in 1999, I remember my father bought me a package to go and watch all of the India games, okay? Wow. And quarterfinals, semifinals, and the final. And I was 14 years old in 1999. And I remember literally at certain times, I was going on my own to these games, only a few that he joined me on. But I was going on my own, especially the London games. At 14 years old, I was just so, and I wanted to relive that moment. Because in 1999, I did it. And I knew 20 વર્ષ મોકો મળ્યો છે પાછું 20 વર્ષ આવશે UK ની અંદર વર્લ્ડ કપ તો મને ખબર નથી 20 વર્ષ સુધી જીવાનો છો કે નથી જીવાનો તો અત્યારનો અનુભવ કરેલો અને જલસા કરેલો. Now I've got my little boy Dev Yogi, and Dev, I want to take him to this, so hopefully in the next 20 years I'll be having the same experience with him at one of these at a World Cup in the UK. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Perfect. So that was your dream come true, and you actually lived the moment to do that.
Yes, very much so.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. Last question. We're approaching time very quickly to move on to the next segment of our session. Last question, and if we may restrict it to only 2 minutes again, is you are about to write or in the process of writing a memoir. How did that come about, and what do you think about it all?
So again, it was just by, like everything in my life, it never planned, not planned at all. I was just talking to a literary agent who shared similar political views to myself on many things like Europe, etc. And we just started talking, and you know, he said to me, have you ever thought about writing your own story? And I said, you know what, I never thought anyone would find it interesting. He goes, you're so wrong. He said, you're so wrong that, you know, why would you ever think that? And actually, to be many, you know, sometimes I do undersell myself. I think it's very natural. I think many of us in our community are quite humble, right? And we try to promote those values of humility and those types of things. And sometimes you can undersell yourself. And I suppose that was probably what was happening with me in respect to this. I never thought people would be interested in a 36-year-old writing a memoir. But he says, you're so multifaceted. There are so many layers to your life that actually people would really engage with your life. Why don't you talk about it? And why don't you do it? And lo and behold, within the space of 2 days, I was signed. Literally, and I hadn't planned it, and none of the plan at all. And then, of course, I said, one of the major problems I have is I don't have time to write. So what happens? He says, don't worry. We will provide you with a ghostwriter. All you have to do is speak, and speak. And I said, well, I'm very good at that, doctor.
I can vouch for that.
Yes, you can see that, can't you? So he says, well, if you can do that for half an hour a day, you'll be, you know, we'll get you published in 12 to 18 months, right? And so yeah, so it's great. And so I went on that, and of course, the more I sat down and looked, and I thought, by golly, yes, this could make a difference to young people's lives. This could make a difference to people's grandchildren that I know, people's children that I know, and to people who actually have always felt that they could have done something in their life. Even if you're 70 and you want to go and study, you want that degree, go and do it. Who the hell tells you you can't do it? Who tells you that you can't achieve even at 75 years old or 80 years old? Get out there, get online, start studying, or go to that university, start studying, right? There's nothing you can't achieve at whatever age you may be. And so I hope when someone reads that, my memoirs and my experiences in life, from my illness to various personal things which will be coming out in the book, you know, you will see that you never give up. And you are never too old to do something or to achieve something. And actually, never undersell yourself in many ways, like I did, you know, earlier on. You know, get yourself out there, put yourself out there. I mean, you're clear examples, both of you and Minaben. You've started this from scratch, and look at you now, you know, it's flying. And it shows it was an idea. You conceptualized the idea, first of all, you made the idea, put it down, and you actually just then delivered it. By delivering it, you see people support it. It's fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you. And that is the spirit with which I think today's Zoom session will be coming closer to an end. But hard work, persistence, perseverance, and keep going. Do not lose the sight of your goal. Kishan, that is the most inspiring thing we've heard from you. You've been through challenges. You've been through every health, wealth, physical, mental challenges to go through what you've gone through, and you are where you are today. At the young age of 36, writing your own memoir, I think that is inspirational enough for the audience on Zoom and on Facebook to get that inspiration from you to just plug in and go for your goals. You know what? This has been amazing a session. It's picked up on different aspects of your life. You've shared some personal things, some professional things as to where you are and how you got there. So for that, from Meena Ben and myself, we thank you for sharing that story. We move on to the next segment of our Minla Zoom session, which is a very rapid fire round. And when I say rapid, I actually mean rapid. A quick question, a quick answer. No time to explain the answer. Short, quick question, short answer. So we'll start the Minla Zoom session now. Are we okay with that, Kishan?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Great. Okay, so the Minla Zoom session with Kishan Devani starts now. The first word, adversity.
Adversity, positivity, if you make it through.
Break through a glass ceiling.
The only way forward. You have to do it.
Ethnic diversity.
It's what makes us rich. It's unity and diversity is what makes humanity rich.
Racial equality.
Imperative, something I would give my life up for.
Gender equality.
Equally as important, absolutely fundamental to the human race.
Prejudice.
Something that needs to be stamped out and rooted out at the root cause.
Brexit.
A calamity.
Dadabhai Naoroji.
Inspirational. First Indian MP in history, and I'm very proud to say he was a Liberal, elected, I think, sometimes, I'm not quite sure the date, but he was the first Indian MP ever in the history of British politics.
Brilliant. Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity doesn't mean equal outcome, unfortunately, but so important for society to progress. Equal opportunity is the root cause of progress.
Our ex-Prime Minister, Mr. David Cameron.
Brexit referendum mistake. Those three together.
Okay. Swaminarayan Stanstha Bochasan Vasi Akshar Purushottam Swaminarayan, VAPS.
My life, the reason why I'm here today.
Pramukh Swami.
Yeah, I would say exactly the same two words for why I'm here today.
And Mahant Swami.
Exactly the same again. Yeah, they leave me. They are my inspiration.
Brilliant. So your favorite sport, as we should ask you again?
Cricket, undeniably, and I have no shame in saying that. Cricket, and the Brits made it. British, we made it as the Brits. The Indians play it very well. Although I was so happy to see England beat India the other day, a couple of days ago. Actually, it was great.
COVID-19 pandemic.
Destructive.
Truly. Okay. Meghan, Harry, and the Oprah show.
Racial discrimination. And yeah, and I think important, very important. So I think those two words together.
Okay. Kamala Harris.
Inspirational, breaking through the glass ceiling.
Tomorrow being the Mother's Day.
Everyone that knows me knows my love for my mother, so I leave it there.
Last but not the least, Dr. Lalit Soda's rapid fire round.
A very good idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kishan. I really appreciate your playing with me on the spot. And this was an amazing question answer session. We literally stuck to the time frame, which is great. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for playing the rapid round. Now we come towards the close of our session with our wonderful guest speaker, Mr. Kishan Devani. But before we end that, we're going to very politely request our Lohana Community United Kingdom President, Sunil Bhai Majitya. Minaben, if you can unmute him. And then we'll be unmuting a gentleman, a business empire holder, Manubhai Chandaria. So we have a minute for Sunil Bhai Majitya to just give us a little bit of a comment on today's speaker and today's show. Sunil Bhai, welcome on the Minla Zoom session. And we've got this amazing speaker with us, Kishan Devani.
Hello, Lalit Bhai. Hello, Minaben. Hi, Kishan.
Hi, Sunil Bhai. Hi.
Very inspirational and encouraging session today, especially for the younger audience listening, and maybe the elder ones as well, as Kishan pointed out earlier on. Essential lesson learned. If you're determined to do or achieve something, don't give up and go for it. Very enjoyable session, as I said. I have not met Kishan personally. I only met Kishan personally once in Leicester. I think that was during the Lohana Mahaparishad Adhivation.
Yes.
And I've always followed him on Facebook, as he'll tell you.
And you always like my stuff, for which I'd love to thank you as well, publicly for
that. and I look forward to reading your memoirs, Kishan.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll be very inspirational. So
well, hopefully we can do it. We can launch it within the Luana community as well. I'd love to do that.
Yes, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil Bhai. Thank you, Lohana Community United Kingdom Chairperson, Mr. Sunil Bhai Majitya. And we will be now moving on next to a business tycoon who is world known, Mr. Manubhai Chandaria. Manubhai, welcome on the Minla Zoom session. And if you can have just some kind words from you towards the session and towards our great speaker, Manubhai.
Thank you very much. Minaben, you brought some interesting sessions, but I would never thought about, when I saw the name of Mr. Devani, I couldn't believe that would it be so much interesting for everyone. But I must say, the guy is really full of spirit and a lot to give. And I think that that both of you have created this opportunity for lots of people to see various people, understand them and their philosophy. I think, well done. The whole idea, sitting in Geneva today, and again connecting to listen, to me, it's a great experience. And it's not only absolutely very well known, but even the people who are doing something for the society. It's wonderful to do. Thank you very much, Minaben, for this whole new ideology, to you for really doing a good MC work.
Thank you.
But the speakers, one after the other, that you've been able to bring has brought a lot of wonderful feeling of something that people can certainly do if they want to do things. It's up to you. It must be in your own hearts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manubhai. Thank you very much. Kishan, go ahead.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Manubhai. And you know, it would be a pleasure I understand you're in Geneva. I do visit sometimes as well, but it would be lovely to connect, and it's an absolute pleasure to hear your thoughts, and very humbling to hear from someone of your own stature, that I could possibly touch your heart as well. But I have lots to learn from people like yourself as well, and I'm sure your story in itself is extremely inspirational. So I'd love to stay in touch. Maybe Minabin could connect us at some point as well. It'd be a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We finally come to the end, but the end doesn't happen till the lady who kickstarts actually puts an end to the seminar. So we have Meena Ben, who's going to say her final thank you and a vote of thanks. Kishan, before I log off, I want to say thank you for inspiring everybody, motivating everybody. And I think we all look forward to your memoir simply because there is so many facets of you that people will be amazed to read, and what a young 36-year-old has achieved and how he's achieved it. So thank you for sharing that little bit with us. Please use this for your memoir if you wish to.
I need a recording for it. But thank you to both you and Meena Ben, because actually, as I said earlier on, you're doing some amazing work, and you're really, people are housebound right now. Let's be very honest with you, though, especially in certain Western countries, they are housebound, and you're providing them with this mechanism to really venture out where they wouldn't be able to have these interactions. So it's really important. Please carry on. Anything I could do to support you, even on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, through my following, I'd be happy to do so. And please carry on. And I hope to join you once again soon.
Thank you. And we had too many more questions. Unfortunately, time is limited, so we had to cut those questions also very short. But hey, look, thank you very much. And Meena Ben, I'm going to let you say the vote of thanks because she's the lady who does it for us. Meena Ben Kagram.
Thank you, Lalit Bhai. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is my humble duty. Behalf of Dr. Lalit, the backbone of this session, and myself, Minla Group, like to thank you all for supporting our divine cause of serving mankind during the period of COVID-19. Our biggest thank you to my humble, young, and dynamic Kishan Devani. We'd like to also thank our Manubhai Chandaria, our greatest support since we started. He's a founder of Asian Foundation in Kenya, doing a lot of things for us. Thank you, Sunil Bhai Majithia, yet another supporter whom I cannot forget is the president of LCUK. Really grateful. You are all, as a Loana clan, are very proud of you. Thank you all. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, my cute cousin. And Asandi Sana, Kwaheri. Good evening. Jai Swami Narayan.
Yes, Swami Narayan.
Jai Swami Narayan.
Meena Ben, you can open up the unmute everybody. Thank you very much.
Yes, we like to. I'll see your baby and your mom as well.
Yes.
We'll do another call for that. Meena Ben.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right, now we can talk 1 minute.